The ululation rose from the compound next door. High-pitched, joyful, piercing through the evening air like knives through silk. Women's voices celebrating, drums beating, the smell of jollof rice and peppered goat meat drifting through the open windows. But in Amara's house, there was only silence. She sat on her bed, hands folded in her lap, staring at the wall that separated her room from the celebration. The wall that had once been hers and Chitty's. The wall that now belonged to Chitty and someone else. Someone she had once called sister. Let me tell you how it started. Let me tell you how a woman can be erased from her own marriage without ever leaving the house. 3 months earlier, the village square had been just as loud, just as full of celebration. But Amara hadn't known then that she was watching her own funeral. The town crier had beaten his gong, and the entire village of Yumubi had gathered. Announcements were rare, important. Everyone came, from the oldest grandmother to the youngest child still strapped to their mother's back. Chief Okafor stood in the center, his voice booming with authority. We gather today to witness a union blessed by our elders and approved by our ancestors. Chitty Oakley, son of this village, will take a second wife. The woman is known to us all, Neka Okonkwo, daughter of the late Chief Okonkwo, friend to this household. Amara's world had stopped spinning. The drums began. The women ululated. And Neka, her best friend since childhood, her prayer partner, her confidant, stepped forward in a wrapper so new it still had the shop creases in it. She didn't look at Amara, not even once. Chitty stood beside her, his face carved from stone, his eyes fixed somewhere above the crowd's heads. He didn't look at Amara either, but everyone else did. She felt their stares like brands on her skin. Pity, judgment, satisfaction from those who had always whispered that a woman without children was a woman without worth. Amara had stood there, in the back of the crowd, watching her husband marry her best friend, and she had felt something inside her crack so completely that she knew it would never be whole again. Her name was Amara Oakley, though she'd been born Amara Nwankwo. She had been gentle since childhood, the kind of girl who cried when other children killed lizards for fun, who saved portions of her food for stray dogs, who stayed after church to help elderly women carry their Bibles home. She married Chitty when she was 19. He was 23, handsome, a secondary school teacher with prospects and a kind smile. Their families had approved. The bride price had been paid with joy on both sides. She had loved him completely, the way young women love when they still believe that love is enough. For the first 2 years, they were happy. She cooked his favorite meals. He brought her flowers from the roadside on his way home from school. They laughed together. They planned together. They tried for a child together. But month after month, year after year, her monthly bleeding came like clockwork, like a cruel reminder, like a failure stamp pressed into her body. She went to the hospital in town. The doctor had run tests, said everything looked normal, told her to be patient. She went to the herbalist. He gave her bitter roots to boil and drink, leaves to tie around her waist at night. She went to the prayer mountain with Neka. They fasted together. They prayed together. Neka would hold her hands and say, God's time is the best time. Don't worry, my sister. Your womb will open. Amara never suspected, never once looked at her friend and thought, you are the snake warming itself by my fire. By the 5th year of marriage, the whispers had grown louder. 5 years and no child? Maybe the girl is barren. That boy needs to find a woman who can give him an heir. Chitty's mother, Mama Chitty, as everyone called her, had started making pointed comments at family gatherings. My friend Mama Obi just became a grandmother. Her son's wife gave birth to twins. Twins. In her 1st year of marriage. Or, Chitty, you are my only son. Who will inherit your father's land if you have no children? Who will pour libation at your grave? Amara would lower her eyes and say nothing. What could she say? That she tried? That she prayed? That she took every herb, followed every instruction, fasted until she was weak? None of that mattered if there was no child. Chitty began to change. Slowly at first, then all at once. He stopped reaching for her at night. Stopped bringing her flowers. Stopped laughing at her jokes. He would come home from school, eat in silence, and sit outside until darkness fell, staring at nothing. Once, she had tried to talk to him. Chitty, please. Talk to me. We can go to another doctor. We can. Leave me alone, Amara, he'd said, his voice flat. Just leave me alone. So she did. She left him alone in his silence and retreated into her own. But she still had Neka. Neka, who came by almost every day. Who sat with her in the kitchen while she cooked. Who prayed with her. Who said all the right things. Don't mind these village people. They don't know what they're saying. God will bless you with children when the time is right. You're still young. You're only 24. You have time. Amara had held onto those words like a drowning woman holds onto driftwood. She never saw the smile Neka gave Mama Chitty when she thought no one was looking. Never heard the private conversations that happened after she went to bed. Never knew that the woman who prayed for her womb to open was the same woman planning to take her place. The meetings started in secret. Mama Chitty would invite Neka over for afternoon tea. They would sit under the mango tree in the backyard, their voices low, their heads close together. He needs a son, Mama Chitty would say. The ancestors are waiting. His father's spirit is restless. But Amara, Neka would begin, her voice carefully concerned. Amara is a good girl, Mama Chitty would interrupt. But goodness doesn't give birth to children. We have waited long enough. You know our traditions. A man whose wife cannot give him children must take another wife. It will break her heart. Hearts mend. Empty lineages don't. These conversations happened a dozen times, 24 more. Each time, Neka's resistance grew weaker. Each time, Mama Chitty's arguments grew stronger. And then one day, Neka stopped resisting at all. If it must be done, she said, looking down at her hands, then let it be someone who loves this family. Someone who will take care of Amara, not cast her out. Mama Chitty had smiled then, sharp and satisfied. You are wise, my daughter. Very wise. The elders were consulted next. For old men who had known Chitty since he was a boy, they sat in the parlor, drinking palm wine, discussing his future like he was a farming project that needed better planning. The boy needs an heir, Ichi Okafor said. No man should go to his grave without a son to remember him. The wife is barren, another elder added. These things happen. It is not her fault, but it is not his burden to bear alone. Chitty had sat among them, saying nothing, his jaw tight. Who would you suggest? Mama Chitty asked, as if she didn't already have someone in mind. Someone from a good family. Someone who understands our ways. Someone who won't cause trouble in the household. I know someone, Mama Chitty said carefully. Neka Okonkwo, Chief Okonkwo's daughter. She is educated, respectful, and she already knows this family well. The elders had nodded, murmuring approval. And Chitty? Chitty had said nothing, just sat there, drinking his palm wine, and let his mother arrange his second marriage. Amara knew something was happening. She could feel it in the way conversations stopped when she entered a room. In the way Mama Chitty smiled at her, pity mixed with something else. Something almost like triumph. But she didn't know what. Not until the day she overheard the prayer. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Neka had come to visit, as usual. They had been sitting in the bedroom, and Neka had suggested they pray together. For your womb, Neka had said. Let's pray one more time. Amara had closed her eyes, grateful for her friend's faithfulness. But halfway through the prayer, she had needed to use the bathroom. She'd gotten up quietly, trying not to disturb Neka's praying. As she walked down the hallway, she heard Neka's voice through the closed door. Still praying. But the words made her blood freeze. Father Lord, if it is not your will for this womb to open, then make a way for another. Let there be a replacement, Lord. Let there be a vessel ready to carry the seed that this house needs. Prepare the way for your perfect will. Amara had stood in the hallway, her hand on the wall to steady herself, her mind trying to make sense of what she'd heard. Replacement. Another vessel. Neka wasn't praying for Amara's womb to open. She was praying for it to stay closed. She was praying for permission to take her place. Amara had walked back into the room on shaking legs and said nothing. She'd finished the prayer with Neka, smiled when Neka hugged her goodbye, and then sat on her bed for 3 hours without moving. That night, she tried to tell Chitty what she'd heard. Chitty, I think Neka is not who we think she is. He barely looked up from his newspaper. What are you talking about? The way she prays. The things she says. I think. Amara, stop, he interrupted. Neka is your friend. She's been nothing but kind to you. Don't let jealousy make you see evil where there is none. I'm not jealous, I said stop. His voice was sharp now. Final. I don't want to hear you speak against Neka. She has been a blessing to this family. Amara had gone quiet then. What else could she do? Her own husband wouldn't believe her. And 2 weeks later, the announcement was made in the village square. The meeting happened in Chitty's mother's house, 3 weeks before the announcement. Mama Chitty had called Chitty and Neka together. No, Amara. This was not a conversation that included her. I have spoken to the elders, Mama Chitty said. They agree that it is time. Chitty, you must take a second wife. Chitty had looked uncomfortable, but not surprised. This had been building for months. And I have already chosen her. Mama Chitty continued, looking at Neka. If you are willing. Neka had the grace to look hesitant, to lower her eyes modestly, to say, but Amara, she is my friend. This will hurt her. Amara will understand, Mama Chitty said firmly. And if she doesn't, she will learn. This is bigger than her feelings. This is about legacy, about family, about the future of this household. What about Amara? Chitty asked quietly. What happens to her? She stays, of course. She is still your wife. But she will understand her place. Neka will be the one who bears children. Amara will help raise them. That is how these things work. Neka had looked at Chitty then, and something passed between them. Something that had been building for months, maybe longer. She had been coming to the house more and more often, staying later, helping with household tasks, making herself indispensable. And Chitty, lonely and angry and desperate for someone to see him as more than a failed husband, had noticed. If it is the will of the elders, Neka said softly, then I will accept. For the sake of the family. And that was how it was decided. Not with Amara's knowledge. Not with her consent. Her future was decided in a room she wasn't allowed to enter, by people who had already written her out of the story. The day of the announcement, Amara had been at the market. She came back to find the entire village gathered in the square. Her first thought was that someone had died. Why else would everyone be there? She pushed through the crowd, trying to see what was happening. And then she heard Chief Okafor's voice, announcing the marriage. She heard her husband's name. She heard Neka's name. The drums started. The women ululated. And Amara stood there, frozen, as her entire world collapsed around her. Someone grabbed her arm. One of the village women, her face twisted with pity. Sorry, my dear. Sorry, but this is how life is. Your husband needs a son. Amara shook her off and pushed forward, trying to get to the front, trying to see if this was real or some terrible nightmare. And then she saw them. Chitty, standing tall, his jaw set, refusing to look in her direction. And Neka, wrapped in new cloth, her head bowed modestly, accepting congratulations from the crowd. Amara's knees gave out. She would have fallen if someone hadn't caught her. She didn't know who. She couldn't see through the tears blurring her vision. Please, she heard herself say. Please, this can't be. Chitty. She called his name, but he didn't turn. Neka, she called out to her friend, her sister, her betrayer. But Neka didn't turn either. The celebration continued around her as if she didn't exist, as if she was already a ghost in her own life. Someone, she never knew who, had helped her home, had walked her back to her house, sat her on her bed, and left her there alone. She sat in the darkness and felt something inside her die that had nothing to do with her womb. The wedding was small but loud. Neka moved into the second room of the compound, the room that had been built for guests, now converted into a bridal chamber. The celebration went on for hours. Music, dancing, laughter. Amara stayed in her room, the door closed, her hands pressed over her ears to block out the sound. But she couldn't block out the knowledge of what was happening next door. Couldn't stop her imagination from filling in the details she didn't want to see. At some point during the night, she fell to her knees. She had prayed so many prayers over the years. Prayers for a child, prayers for healing, prayers for favor. But this prayer was different. She didn't pray for a baby. She didn't pray for her womb to open. She didn't even pray for her marriage to be restored. She prayed for one thing only, truth. God, she whispered into the darkness. I don't know why this is happening. I don't know what I did wrong. But if there is any justice in this world, if you see me, if you hear me, let the truth come out. Whatever is hidden, let it be revealed. Let everyone see what I see. Let them know what I know. Let the truth come from the place they least expect it. She didn't know then how that prayer would be answered. She didn't know that truth has a way of announcing itself, often in the form of a cry from the wrong house. The next morning, everything had changed and nothing had changed. Amara woke up in the same bed, in the same room, in the same house. But she was no longer the wife. She was the other wife, the silent one, the one who had failed. Neka moved through the household like she'd always belonged there. She woke early to make Chitty's breakfast. She served him with smiles and soft words. She sat beside him in the evening, asking about his day, laughing at his jokes. Everything Amara used to do, Neka now did. But better, louder, with more confidence. Mama Chitty beamed with satisfaction. You see, this is how a wife should be. Attentive, joyful, not walking around with a sad face all the time. Amara heard it. She heard all of it. But she said nothing. She moved through the house like a shadow. She cooked her own food, washed her own clothes, stayed in her room as much as possible. When Neka spoke to her, she responded with as few words as possible. Good morning, Amara. Morning. Did you sleep well? Yes. Should I make breakfast for you too? No, thank you. The politeness was a knife that cut both ways. 3 weeks after the wedding, Neka made an announcement at dinner. I think, she said, her hand on her stomach, her eyes downcast in false modesty. I think I might be pregnant. The room exploded with joy. Mama Chitty ululated. Chitty's face lit up with hope for the first time in months. Neighbors who happened to be visiting started celebrating on the spot. So fast, someone exclaimed. God has truly blessed this union. Amara sat at the edge of the gathering and watched. Watched her husband's joy. Watched Neka's satisfied smile. 3 weeks. You couldn't know you were pregnant in 3 weeks. Not for certain. Not in a way that would be announced with such confidence. But no one else seemed to care. They wanted to believe. Needed to believe. This pregnancy was proof that the problem had never been Chitty. It had always been Amara. From that day on, Neka became the center of everything. She claimed morning sickness, though Amara never saw her vomit. She claimed cravings, demanding specific foods at odd hours, sending Chitty running to the market. She claimed fatigue, spending hours in her room with the door locked, refusing visitors. The baby must be protected, she would say. I can't take any chances. When women from the village offered to visit, offer advice, check on her progress, she refused. Not yet. It's too early. I don't want to jinx it. Months passed. 1 month. 2 months. 3 months. And still, there was no visible belly. No glow. No real signs of pregnancy beyond Neka's claims. But no one questioned it. They wanted the miracle too badly. By the 4th month, even Mama Chitty was getting suspicious. Neka, you need to let the midwife examine you, she said one afternoon, just to make sure everything is progressing well. No. Neka's response was sharp, almost panicked. Then, softer, I don't want too many people touching me. It's not safe for the baby. But the midwife is experienced. She's delivered half the babies in this village. I know, Mama. But please, just let me wait until I'm further along. Please. And Mama Chitty, desperate for a grandchild, had relented. Amara watched all of this from her quiet corner of the house. Watched and said nothing. Because what could she say? That she suspected Neka was lying? That there was no pregnancy? That this was all a performance? No one would believe her. They'd say she was jealous, bitter, evil. So she stayed silent. But she watched, and she noticed things. Like how Neka's stomach remained completely flat under her loose wrappers. Like how she never actually vomited, just made retching sounds behind closed doors. Like how she refused to let anyone examine her, touch her, or even get too close. Like how, late at night when she thought everyone was asleep, Neka would slip out of her room and disappear for hours. Where was she going? Amara didn't know. But it wasn't to the bathroom. It wasn't to the kitchen. It was somewhere outside. Somewhere secret. 6 months into the pregnancy, something shifted in Amara. She was sitting in her room one evening when she heard Neka's voice drifting through the walls. You were only a placeholder, Amara. A placeholder until the real wife came along. Neka was talking to one of the village women who had come to visit. She thought Amara couldn't hear. I always knew Chitty deserved better. A woman who could give him children. A woman who could make him happy. And look at God. He made a way for me to step in where you failed. Something inside Amara snapped. Not in anger. Not in rage. In clarity. She realized, sitting there in the darkness of her room, that she had been waiting. Waiting for Chitty to defend her. Waiting for Neka to feel guilty. Waiting for Mama Chitty to show mercy. Waiting for God to fix everything. But none of that was going to happen. If she wanted to survive this, she had to stop waiting. The next morning, she packed a small bag. Where are you going? Chitty asked, the first words he'd spoken directly to her in weeks. To my mother's village, Amara said calmly. For a visit. For how long? I don't know. He looked like he wanted to say something. But in the end, he just nodded and let her go. Mama Chitty didn't even ask where she was going. Good riddance, her face seemed to say. Only Neka looked worried. Just for a moment. As if Amara leaving disrupted some plans she hadn't accounted for. But Amara didn't care. She walked out of that compound with her head high and her heart, for the first time in months, a little bit lighter. She was going home. Not to beg. Not to cry. Not to wait for rescue. But to heal. To remember who she was before she became defined by what she couldn't do. And somewhere, in ways she didn't yet understand, the wheels of justice were already turning. 9 months came. The entire village was buzzing with anticipation. Neka had made it very clear that she was due any day now. She'd started wearing even looser clothes. Walked with her hand on her lower back. Made pained expressions at random moments. The baby is pressing on my bladder. The baby is kicking so hard. I don't think I can wait much longer. The midwife had been summoned 3 times already for false labor. Each time, Neka had sent her away, saying it wasn't time yet. Then, on a night when the rain poured down in sheets and thunder shook the earth, Neka's screams pierced through the storm. It's time. The baby is coming. Mama Chitty bolted from her sleep. Chitty ran to Neka's room. The midwife was summoned again, along with several village women who had experience with childbirth. They all gathered in Neka's room, ready to welcome the long-awaited heir. Neka lay on the bed, writhing dramatically, crying out in what was supposed to be labor pain. But the midwife, a woman who had delivered hundreds of babies, was frowning. Let me examine you, she said. No, don't touch me. Just wait. The baby is coming. I need to check your progress. I said a no. The women exchanged glances. Something was wrong. The midwife tried again, more forcefully this time. She pulled back the wrapper covering Neka's lower body, and she gasped. There is no baby. The room went silent. What? Mama Chitty pushed forward. What do you mean there's no baby? I mean, the midwife said slowly, her voice shaking with rage and disbelief, that this woman is not in labor. She is not pregnant. There is no baby here. Neka bolted upright. You're lying. The baby is coming. I feel it. You feel nothing, the midwife said coldly. Because there is nothing to feel. She turned to the gathered women. This is not labor. This woman has been lying to you. There is no pregnancy. There never was. Chaos erupted. Mama Chitty started screaming. The village women backed away in horror. Chitty stood frozen, unable to process what he was hearing. No, no, no. Neka was crying now, real tears, desperate tears. You don't understand. I am pregnant. It's just. Stop lying, one of the women shouted. We have eyes. We can see. But before the confrontation could escalate further, another sound cut through the storm. A baby's cry. Loud. Clear. Unmistakable. Everyone froze. Do you hear that? Someone whispered. The cry came again. But it wasn't coming from Neka's room. It was coming from outside. From the direction of the road that led to the neighboring village. The village where Amara's mother lived. At the exact same moment, in a small house 2 villages away, Amara was waking up to the same sound. A baby crying. She sat up, confused. It was the middle of the night. The storm was raging outside. Why would there be a baby crying? She got up and opened her door. The cry was coming from outside. From the small veranda at the front of her mother's house. She grabbed a lamp and went to investigate. And there, on the veranda, wrapped in a clean white cloth and placed carefully in a woven basket, was a baby. A newborn. Hours old, maybe less. Crying lustily, waving tiny fists in the air. Amara stood frozen, staring at the impossible sight. Mama, she called out, her voice shaking. Her mother came running, along with 2 of her aunts who had been staying with them. What is it? What's wrong? There's a baby. They all stared at the child. Where did it come from? Her mother whispered. I don't know. It was just here. One of the aunts picked up the baby, checking quickly. It's a girl. Healthy. Recently born. Still has the cord tied properly. Someone left her here, Amara's mother said. But who? And why? Amara didn't answer. She was staring at the baby, at the way the child had stopped crying the moment her aunt picked her up, at the way the tiny eyes seemed to focus directly on Amara. And she remembered her prayer. The one she'd prayed on Neka's wedding night. Let the truth come from the place they least expect it. This child, Amara whispered, was meant to be here. Back in Yumubi village, the confrontation in Neka's room had reached its peak. Explain yourself. Chitty was shouting. Explain to me how you have been pretending to be pregnant for 9 months. I wasn't pretending. Neka sobbed. I was pregnant. I was. But something happened. Something went wrong. Nothing went wrong, the midwife said coldly. Because there was nothing to go wrong. You have never been pregnant. Your womb shows no signs of recent pregnancy. No stretching. No changes. Nothing. Then where did the baby cry come from? Mama Chitty demanded. We all heard it. I don't know, the midwife said. But it didn't come from this room. The village women were starting to leave, disgusted and angry. They had been fooled. They had celebrated a lie. They had gathered for a birth that was never going to happen. One of the women who lived near the road suddenly spoke up. I saw something, she said hesitantly. About 3 months ago. Late at night. I saw Neka leaving the compound with a bag. She went toward the forest. When she came back hours later, the bag was gone. Another woman gasped. I saw something too. She was talking to that woman, the one who sells herbs at the edge of the market. The one people say does dark things. The pieces were coming together. You were planning something, Mama Chitty said slowly, her voice dangerous. You were going to get a baby from somewhere, weren't you? You were going to pretend you gave birth and present someone else's child as yours. Neka's silence was answer enough. Where is the baby? Chitty demanded. What were you planning to do? But before Neka could answer, a commotion erupted outside. Someone was running through the rain, shouting. Come quickly. Amara has a baby. The entire room emptied. Everyone ran outside into the storm, following the messenger. They ran through the rain, through the mud, to the neighboring village, to the small house where Amara's mother lived. And there, on the veranda, surrounded by women from that village, stood Amara. She was holding a baby. A tiny, perfect, beautiful baby girl. The crowd from Yumubi village arrived and stopped in shocked silence. Where did that baby come from? Someone whispered. Amara's mother stepped forward. She was left here. Tonight. During the storm. We found her on our doorstep. Left here. Chitty's voice was hoarse. By who? We don't know. But. Amara's mother looked at her daughter, then at the baby. But she was meant for Amara. I know it. I feel it. Mama Chitty pushed through the crowd, staring at the baby with wide eyes. This is the cry we heard, One of the women said softly. Not from Neka's room. From here. From Amara's house. Everyone turned to look at Neka, who had followed the crowd. She stood there, soaked from the rain, her face a mask of shock and defeat. You lied, someone said. You were never pregnant. And the baby came to the wrong house, another added. The baby came to Amara. The symbolism was not lost on anyone. The village elders, who had also arrived, stood in stunned silence. Ichi Okafor finally spoke. The ancestors have spoken. This is their judgment. This is their answer. He turned to Chitty. You abandoned your wife because she had no child. You took another wife based on lies and deceit. And now the child, the cry you were waiting for, came not to the new wife's house, but to the old wife's arms. This is divine justice. Amara stayed with her mother for 3 more weeks. During that time, the entire village was buzzing with what had happened. The story spread like wildfire, to neighboring villages, to the market, to the church, everywhere. The woman who was called barren had been given a child by God himself, delivered to her doorstep like a gift from heaven. Meanwhile, the woman who had claimed to be pregnant had been exposed as a liar and a fraud. The baby's origin remained a mystery. No one came forward to claim her. No one knew where she had come from. Amara's mother said it didn't matter. Some blessings don't need explanation. They just need acceptance. Amara named the baby Kayamika. God is beautiful. Because in that moment, holding that child who had come from nowhere, Amara felt like she was seeing God's beauty for the first time in years. When she finally returned to Yamubi village, she didn't sneak in. She didn't hide. She walked down the main road in broad daylight, carrying Kayamika in her arms, her head held high. The village came out to see. Women ululated, not in mockery, but in genuine celebration. Children ran alongside her, wanting to see the baby. Even the men who had once whispered that she was cursed now nodded respectfully. She walked straight to Chitty's compound. He was standing outside, waiting. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago, worn down by shame and the weight of his mistakes. When he saw her, he took a step forward, then stopped, as if he didn't know whether he had the right to approach. Amara stopped a few feet away from him. Amara, he said, his voice hoarse. Where is she? Amara asked calmly. Where is Neka? Gone. He looked down at his feet. She left the same night, packed her things, and disappeared. No one has seen her since. Amara nodded. She had expected as much. Neka couldn't face the village after what had been exposed. Couldn't face Amara. Couldn't face herself. And your mother? Inside. She wants to see you. To see the baby. Amara shifted Kayamika in her arms. The baby was awake, looking around with curious eyes. I didn't come back for forgiveness, Amara said quietly. I didn't come back to make things easy for anyone. I know. I came back because this is my home. Because I have every right to be here. Because I am still your wife, whether you deserve me or not. Chitty's eyes filled with tears. I was a fool. Worse than a fool. I was cruel. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I let my mother poison my mind. I let Neka deceive me. I destroyed everything good we had because I was too proud to wait on God's timing. Yes, Amara said simply. You did all of those things. Can you? Is there any way you can forgive me? Amara looked at him for a long moment. At this man she had loved so completely. This man who had broken her heart so thoroughly. I don't know, she said honestly. Right now, I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I even want to. But I know this. I will not let what you did destroy me. I will not let your choices define my worth. She walked past him, into the compound, into the house that had once been hers. Mama Chitty was sitting in the parlor. When she saw Amara, she stood up slowly, her face filled with shame. Amara, my daughter. I am not your daughter, Amara said, her voice calm but firm. You made that very clear when you chose another woman to take my place. Mama Chitty's face crumpled. I was wrong. I see that now. I see how wrong I was. The gods have shown me. The ancestors have judged me. Please, Amara, please let me hold my grandchild. Amara looked down at Kayamika, then back at Mama Chitty. This is not your grandchild, she said quietly. This child was given to me. Not to this family. Not to this household. To me. I will decide who has the privilege of knowing her. And right now, you have not earned that privilege. She turned and walked to her old room. It was exactly as she had left it. No one had touched it, as if they had been waiting for her to come back. She closed the door and sat on her bed, holding Kayamika close. Outside, she could hear Mama Chitty weeping, could hear Chitty pacing, could hear the whispers of neighbors who had gathered to see what would happen. But inside this room, there was only peace. For the first time in years, Amara felt like herself again. The days that followed were strange. Amara went about her life as if nothing had happened. She cooked her meals. She cared for Kayamika. She greeted neighbors who came to visit. But everything had changed. Chitty tried to talk to her multiple times, tried to apologize, tried to explain. She listened politely, then went about her business as if he hadn't spoken. He slept in his own room. She slept in hers. They lived in the same house, but in completely different worlds. Mama Chitty tried a different approach. She started cooking Amara's favorite meals, leaving them outside her door with apologetic notes. Amara accepted the food but said nothing. The village's attitude toward Chitty had changed dramatically. Men who used to clap him on the back and call him our son now gave him cool nods. Women who used to smile at him now looked away. Even his students at school seemed more distant, as if they had heard what their teacher had done and lost respect for him. The elders called a meeting 2 weeks after Amara's return. They summoned Chitty to the village square and made him stand before them publicly. Ichi Okafor spoke for all of them. Chitty Oakley, you have brought shame to this village. You abandoned a faithful wife because of impatience and pride. You allowed lies and deceit to flourish in your home. You participated in the humiliation of an innocent woman. Chitty stood with his head bowed, accepting every word. The ancestors have shown their displeasure. The child you desperately wanted came, but not to the house you thought, not to the wife you chose, but to the wife you rejected. This is a sign, a judgment, a lesson. Ichi Okafor paused, letting the words sink in. You will remain married to Amara if she chooses to keep you, but you will lose your position as a respected man in this village. You will lose your voice in village meetings. You will rebuild your reputation through years of faithful service, not through titles or positions. And you will learn this lesson. A man who cannot honor his wife in her lowest moment does not deserve to celebrate with her in her highest. Chitty accepted the judgment without argument. What could he say? It was all true. The village women who had once whispered about Amara's barrenness now came to apologize. We were wrong, sister. We judged you when we should have supported you. We believed lies when we should have sought truth. Forgive us. Amara accepted their apologies with grace, but she didn't forget. She had learned a valuable lesson. People's opinions are fickle. They celebrate you when you rise and mock you when you fall. She would never again measure her worth by what they thought. 3 months after her return, Amara made a decision. She called Chitty and Mama Chitty to sit with her in the parlor. I have thought carefully about what I want, she said, and I have decided. They both leaned forward, hopeful and fearful at the same time. I will stay in this marriage, Amara said. Not because I have forgiven everything. Not because I have forgotten what was done to me. But because I choose to give this family another chance. Mama Chitty started crying. Thank you, my daughter. Thank you. I'm not finished, Amara interrupted. I will stay. But things will be different now. I will no longer be the silent wife who accepts everything. I will no longer shrink myself to make others comfortable. I will speak. I will decide. I will live fully. She turned to Chitty. If you want to be a husband to me, you will have to earn that right again. You will have to show me, through actions not words, that you have changed. You will have to prove that you see me, not as a vessel for children, not as a placeholder, but as a person, as a woman worthy of respect and love. I will, Chitty said, his voice thick with emotion. I will spend the rest of my life proving it. We'll see, Amara said simply. She stood up, picked up Kayamika, and walked to her room. Behind her, Mama Chitty and Chitty sat in silence, understanding that they had been given a gift they didn't deserve, a second chance. Whether they would waste it or honor it remained to be seen. 5 years passed. Kayamika grew into a bright, joyful child who called Amara Mama and filled their home with laughter. Chitty kept his promise. He became a different man, humble, attentive, respectful. He worked to rebuild his reputation through service, not through demands for respect. He learned to listen to Amara, to value her opinions, to see her as a partner rather than a possession. It took 3 years before Amara truly forgave him. Another year before she allowed herself to trust him again. Another year before their marriage felt like a marriage and not just two people coexisting. Mama Chitty learned her lesson too. She became Kayamika's most devoted grandmother, but she never again presumed to control Amara's life. She had learned that respect must be earned, not demanded. And Amara? Amara bloomed. She became a voice for other women in the village, women who were struggling with infertility, women who were being pressured by their in-laws, women who felt invisible in their own homes. She started a small cooperative where women could sell their crafts and support each other. She spoke at village meetings, something women rarely did, about the importance of treating all wives with dignity, whether they had children or not. She became known not as the barren woman, or even the woman who got the miracle baby, but as Amara, a woman of strength, wisdom, and grace. One evening, as she sat on her veranda watching Kayamika play, Chitty sat down beside her. Do you ever wonder, he asked quietly, about where she came from? About why she was left at your mother's house that night? Amara smiled, watching her daughter chase butterflies in the fading light. I used to wonder, she said. In the beginning, I asked God 1,000 questions. Why her? Why then? Why me? And did you get answers? No, but I stopped needing them. She turned to look at him. Some blessings don't come with explanations. They come with purpose. Kayamika wasn't given to me to answer questions. She was given to me to teach lessons. What lessons? Amara looked back at her daughter. That some wombs are not closed, they're protected. That timing is not the same as denial. That what people call impossible, God calls a setup for a miracle. She paused, then added, and that the cry you're waiting for might come from a place you never expected, from a house you weren't watching, from a moment you weren't planning. Chitty was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I don't deserve you. No, Amara agreed. You don't, but you're learning to. And that's enough for now. They sat together in comfortable silence as the sun set over Yumubi village, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. And somewhere in that sky, in that moment, Amara felt the presence of something bigger than herself. Something that had been watching when everyone else looked away. Something that had heard her prayer on that terrible wedding night. Something that had answered in the only way that would change everything. With a cry, from the wrong house. Years later, when Kayamika was old enough to understand, Amara told her the whole story. She told her about the years of waiting, about the pain of being called barren, about Neka's betrayal, about the fake pregnancy, about the night she appeared on the veranda. Kayamika listened with wide eyes, processing everything. So I'm special? She asked when Amara finished. No, baby, Amara said gently. You're not special because of how you came. You're special because of who you are, because of the love you brought with you, because of the lesson you taught all of us. What lesson? Amara smiled. That God's timing is perfect. That closed doors don't mean closed destiny. That what people reject, God redeems. And that sometimes the greatest blessing comes in the form of a mystery we're not meant to solve, just meant to receive. She pulled her daughter close. You came when everyone had given up. You appeared when no one was looking. You arrived not with explanation, but with purpose. And that purpose was to remind everyone in this village that some things are beyond human planning. Some things belong only to God. Kayamika hugged her mother tight. I'm glad I came to you, Mama. So am I, my love. So am I. The moral of this story is, some wombs are not closed. They are protected. Some delays are not denials. They are preparations. Some cries don't come from where you expect. They come from where they're meant to be heard. And sometimes, the greatest miracle is not in getting what you prayed for, but in discovering that what you received was better than anything you could have imagined. The next time you see a woman struggling with something beyond her control, infertility, loss, betrayal, pain, remember Amara's story. Remember that her worth was never determined by what she could or couldn't produce. Remember that her vindication didn't come from revenge, but from patience and grace. Remember that the cry came from the wrong house, because it was actually the right house all along. And if you are that woman, the one waiting, the one hurting, the one being called broken, remember this. Your story is not over. Your worth is not defined by what others say you lack. Your blessing might be on its way in a form you never expected, from a place you never imagined, at a time when everyone else has stopped watching. Keep your heart open. Keep your faith strong. Keep your dignity intact. Because when your cry comes, and it will come, everyone will know that it came from exactly the house where it belonged. Yours.